So joining me now is Astead Herndon. He is a national political reporter for the New York Times, and Aarti Shahani. She is the author of Here We Are, American Dreams, American Nightmares. That is a great title for a book. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Astead, why don't we start with you? So we're going to wake up tomorrow, new phase in the campaign. What should we be looking ahead to now that the VP choice has been made?
I think this means the kind of the general election kind of final frontier is upon us. We are now going to get to the conventions, although they're both going to be like more virtual conventions. But we're going to now see the kind of Biden-Trump matchup in all of its glory. I think what the VP pick did today is show from the Biden campaign that they are at once trying to energize a kind of constituency in the party's base, but also making a very conventional choice, wanting to make sure that this does not have any surprises between now and November, that it doesn't throw a wrench in the race. Senator Harris is a known quantity on the national stage, and that allows the Biden campaign to focus its efforts most clearly against President Trump. There's not going to be, to our knowledge at this point, we don't foresee any big new things coming from the vice presidential selection. It allows Vice President Biden to carry the energy that the polling shows he currently has into the general election. It is up to the Trump campaign to try to reverse that.
Aarti, let's talk about this, and this will, get all of the people who are on social media who are texting me and emailing me saying, "Don't forget she's mixed heritage." So I wanted to say, okay, we have a whole segment coming up on that. Hold your horses, okay? And we'll be talking about it a lot more. But thank you for joining us. Listen, this is a picture of her parents on Facebook, Shamala Gopalan, and also Donald Harris, immigrants from India and Jamaica. You pointed out to us that this family photo from Harris' cousin showing her in a sari, this is another big first, and it is a milestone as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, Desi is slang for people of South Asian origin. Desi Twitter is totally exploding over the nomination of Harris. And it's interesting, right, because she has not led in her story of herself as being part of the South Asian community. In a lot of ways, you've kind of seen her stumbling toward knowing how to relate to it, because we're not yet seen as part of the American political mainstream, but obviously politically and financially we're more and more relevant to Beltway politics. And her story is kind of, like recently before she ended her presidential bid, she was doing a video with Mindy Kaling, and they were making dosa together. Now dosa, and I'm sure you've had it, right? Like you've had dosa.
Yeah, I've had it. I lived in India for a while. I worked there for this company in Delhi, so I've had a lot, and it's amazing. So now you made me hungry, but go on. Sorry.
And she pointed out. Well, you're welcome for that. She pointed out she hadn't made dosa before, and I guess part of me is wondering, how is she going to start signaling her deep connection to her roots and her uniquely American story, right? Because being multiracial and herself being migrant, and by that I mean she was born in this country but then went to Canada for many years. I mean, that is so much of our experience. That is so much of how we live. And we're at this juncture where there's this big disconnect between the political narrative and our realities. She's quintessentially American in her complexity, in being of mixed origin, of being the fruit of Black and brown love, and I want to see her own more and more of that.
Yeah, I think it's and it's tough. I think in America, I'm glad you're here to talk about this, because it's tough for Americans to, because people want to put people into a box, like you have, okay, either you're this or you're that or you're that. Okay, so she's multi-ethnic. She has multi-ethnicities. There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually really great. It's something that we should embrace, rather than, I know sometimes it's difficult to find the language to express that, or people are just not used to it, but isn't that what America really is about?
I mean, this is kind of like the tragic irony of our moment, is that at the very time that we're just talking about how polarized this country is, the stark fact continues to be that we are the epicenter of the world converging. Your life, my life, and her life were evidence of that. And people relate to it. I mean, the reason they see Twitter is going crazy is because they see themselves in her. And for me, for example, I grew up in working class New York City. My American story, I was an undocumented immigrant of the child my family came. We overstayed visas and then we adjusted to this country and eventually became citizens. My story is a bunch of black aunties, Jamaican, African American, Nigerian, Auntie Ayo, one of my favorite, teaching us how to make this country our home. And that's true for a lot of working class South Asians. Like you look throughout New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Atlanta, so many working class Asians have the story of learning to be American through our black, brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And she embodies that.
Right. And then she's a woman of color. And that's okay, so that's it. She's a woman of color, and that's what's important here. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I said, listen, Senator Harris knows how to go after someone. This is her on the Hill. Watch this.
Kasowitz, Benson, and Torres, which is the law firm founded by Mark Kasowitz, who is President Trump's personal lawyer. Have you had any conversation about Robert Mueller or his investigation with anyone at that firm? Yes or no?
Well, is there a person you're talking about?
I'm asking you a very direct question. Who'd you talk to?
I don't think I'm not remembering.
You have an impeccable memory. You've been speaking for almost 8 hours, I think more, with this committee about all sorts of things you remember. Has the president or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone? Yes or no, please, sir?
The president or anybody else.
Seems you would remember something like that and be able to tell us.
Yeah, but I'm trying to grapple with the word suggest. I mean, there have been discussions of matters out there that they have not asked me to open an investigation. But
perhaps they've suggested.
I don't know. I wouldn't say suggest.
Hinted.
I don't know.
That's tough. And is often the case in politics. Some people will love that toughness. Some will target it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can run a highlight clip of Senator Harris's moments, particularly on these committees. This is really where she made her introduction to the American people, asking those tough questions, particularly of Trump administration officials. I remember the time in which I was covering Senator Harris's presidential campaign, and things that were universally true of the people who knew her kind of throughout her life was that this was someone who kind of was empathetic and someone who also was tough and was best in times in which which she was going on offense. And I think that is something that you can expect from Senator Harris, that she will be a kind of well-placed voice for Joe Biden, who hasn't necessarily seemed at ease in the kind of his more offensive moments. He now has someone who is very good at that and is well-suited at that and is very comfortable in that role. But I think even more so than that, we talk about her kind of unique American origin story. I think that's something she's going to be able to lean into more now in this role. The presidential campaign can ask someone to get in the box. I remember the first story I wrote about Kamala Harris and her presidential aspirations was about how she was hard to define. And that can be difficult when you're trying to lead at the top of the ticket and people want a clear understanding of where your ideology is, what your background is, and the like. This is a role that could allow her to step into her own and also to kind of be the voice of where Biden wants to go offensively. I think that we're going to see a kind of different Senator Harris than the one on the trail, who often faced questions on where she stood on particular issues.
All right. I said thank you, as always. And Aarti, I think that what we talked about is an important conversation and that we need to learn more about and discuss as we move through this election. And I think the senator can help the country and the world understand that. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Listen, I want to get now to Marilyn Mosby. She is